Hello, I am Floyd Peterson. Welcome to People in Perspective. Here I have Bryan Peterson, owner of the Morgan Music. So I was wondering about, because you have your degree in theater, and I was wondering what skills do you use today?
Yeah, I have degrees in creative writing and theater, and the theater was partly writing, partly acting, and partly tech, and tech and building. So probably the most obvious thing is if I'm working with wood, I'm working with stuff like what we would have used to build props, to build sets, painting and finishing, that sort of thing. But also, we have a store, and the store needs to be well lit, so there's some lighting aspects to it. If you're kind of familiar, you'll flag the lights and see where they're shining. You want to make sure that all your guitars have proper lighting. But then there's also that creative writing when I write the copy for all of this, or have the whole website, or make an appearance here. I have to write out a lot of those responses, or a lot of the information about what these guitars are made of, how they're built. We try and do some like YouTube type stuff as well. So there's a little acting and performance in that as well.
I was wondering what jobs you had before starting the business.
Well, that's kind of a long and storied series. Well, I worked in music retail stores for 22 years, roughly. 18 years with one chain and 3 years with the other chain. And really when I went into it, it was kind of like doing theater in school was almost a way of burning out on theater. It was a little much, and so I really wanted to get into more writing than performance aspects and set building, and set off to do that. And while I was doing that, I was working at these music shops, and that's kind of really where I learned a lot of the finer details of this. I don't have training in building a guitar, but I've watched many people set up and adjust guitars. And over the years, I picked up more and more details. I wasn't really even like the most knowledgeable person. It was just, it's a hobby, right? Working in those stores, yeah, you get some rock stars through, but mainly it's a hobby shop. And a lot of people don't think about it that way. So there's a lot of people who want to hobby build. There's a lot of people who just want to play as a hobby and get work done. And I start paying attention to a lot of details and learning everything that I could. And pretty soon I was like the guy who knows everything in the store. You know, it's like, oh, you want to do that? The only guy you should talk to is Bryan. And that's kind of where it started. And then eventually, those jobs don't really give you a lot of space for creativity. And I'm just like full on always creative. So I needed to get out of them and do something more with my brain and the way my brain works. So building guitars and designing them from scratch was really the way to go.
You're always talking about the community, from going and being in a retail store and owning your own business, and I was wondering what kind of like the difference is.
Community is really important. As like a salesperson, that's how you make your money. You know, those jobs were commission sales jobs. That's how you make your money. But I had friends who would chase me from store to store to store through two chains for 20 some years. And one of them just tracked me down last week, in fact, you know, and
Yeah.
they're wonderful people. And it becomes more, I really just want to work with those guys. I look at it as working with them rather than selling to them. I mean, I've been able to hang out with them and play shows with them and do all sorts of other things outside of just selling them stuff. And it's been a wonderful experience. And, you know, there's always these stories about like terrible retail customers and things. And it was in one of those incidents where I kind of realized that like everybody has their own thing. the thing that they care about, the thing that they're working on, and they have this response to it, and sometimes it comes out pretty strongly. And I learned to really focus in on this is an individual person, and this is their thing. This is the thing that they are passionate about. And once I started thinking that way, there were no bad customers. Absolutely not. It was just people who were doing their thing.
Yeah. So here we are sitting with that guitar in your hands that you
Yes.
made, and this other one. I was wondering what the design process looked like for designing this one.
So, okay, so it's very difficult to do something new in an industry that's been around for 70 years, right? Just about every design has been done. And especially in guitars, you have the guys who are very traditionalists. You know, I want my 50s style Les Paul, or my 50s style Telecaster, or my 50s style Stratocaster. That's it. And to do something that is a little bit more off the wall is either a very niche market or it's never going to hit. So the first thing that I wanted to make sure of was the shape was familiar. So this one is very much like a Gibson Les Paul. The single cutaway, we have one cutaway here. This is not a cutaway, so they call it a single cut. And kind of the big back, the two humbuckers, the scale length, the bridge setup, everything is basically like a Les Paul. Now Les Paul would have at least this much of mahogany on the back, plus a ½ inch of maple, which would get shaved down to about ¼ inch as they sculpt it. This one, we've got the mahogany on the top and this inset of maple, which actually extends out beyond the actual traditional lines of the guitar. So in some ways that became like, that was an accident. Like as I was drawing it, I just kind of extended it out and said, okay, I'll fill with that a little bit later. And I kind of went, you know what, I kind of like that. I've never seen anybody do that, and I kind of like that. And then some of these curves, the shape of this and the fact that it's inset like this actually came as inspiration from cars. So I called this one the Cobra, which was inspired by Shelby AC Cobra, and also from, say, 50s Corvettes, which had kind of a scoop in the side. And also, if you kind of hold it this way and the Cobra is kind of coming like that, you actually do get kind of a hooded Cobra kind of look for it.
Yeah.
So that's where some of the style comes from. I look at a lot of cars and a lot of other design influences from the past, and that probably came out of theater too, where we did a lot of design, costume design and stage design. And I would look at different styles of art and different styles of historic, say, interior decoration or whatever, architecture. Any of those things could come into what I'm doing. And that's the fun of it. It's using everything that I know to be creative in some way, shape, or form. It really uses everything.
Yeah, so I was kind of wondering, how do you juggle with being a business owner and also doing everything else, like the finances?
That is a challenge.
Yeah.
You know, through all those years of working at those stores, you can really just work at a store. You know, that's fine. You can just work at a store. But I spent all my time learning, paying attention to everything that was going on, no matter who it was or what was going on. Even people who would come down from like corporate management, I'd spend time talking to them and spend time just paying attention to all the stories from, when they left, you know, they said this and this and this, and these are the things that we have to take care of. So all that stuff kind of went in as knowledge in a whole system of keeping the store running. And we are a little bit different as a store because we are a custom shop. I'll build anything. Those stores, nobody built anything. But I will build a guitar, I will build a pedal, I make picks, I do leather work, I'll do straps, I make my own tools. I don't do amps yet, but that's really just doing big pedals. in a lot of ways. So it's a full custom shop. And there's aspects of that that are challenging. You have to manage your materials, you have to manage your orders, you have to make sure that everything is in stock and ready to go. But then there's the store, there's the accounting, there's the product ordering, there's product selection, that's the buying and the purchasing. There's all the accounting, and I learned that all on those jobs, which most people probably wouldn't. Learned them all on that job and created my own system of all the record keeping and everything. And it takes time, and you refine that system so it's fast, and you just keep going.
Yeah. So I was wondering if you could play something.
Yeah, let's see here. So this is the Cobra. It's 2 humbucker guitars, so it's a little bit more designed for rock and right. And then you can kick on. We didn't really sound check for the distortion level, but I try to keep them pretty much the same. If I don't lose my pick. So that's this guitar. You know, this is the first guitar I ever built. Yeah. Literally the first guitar I ever built, and that's the second one I ever built. And I got to say, it's like a dream come true in a lot of ways. It's like taking a plank of wood and turning it into this that somebody can just rock out on and have a great time. It's wonderful. But it's also always a technical challenge. 1/1000th of an inch is a huge deal in the playability of an instrument. And that's the fact that it came out playable is almost luck, and it's almost magic, but you know, I worked really hard to make sure that happened.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for coming on the show. Thank you for joining us on People in Perspective. I'm Floyd Peterson, and this is Bryan Peterson, owner of Morgan Music.